Well, hello everyone, and welcome to April's PDN Live. And thank you, Springfield Armory, for sponsoring it. Tonight's PDN Live is Ask Rob Anything. This is, again, another fan favorite. So those of you that are listening live, please feel free to ask any questions that come to your mind to ask Rob. The more relevant the questions are to personal defense and training, the more likely we'll be to answer them. If you like what you're listening to, sign up for our free newsletter. It's online at personaldefensenetwork.com. You can get great personal defense content delivered right to your inbox. You can also interact with us online at personaldefensenetwork.com on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. So yeah, come interact with us. And with us, we've got Rob tonight. Hey, Rob, good to see you. Been super busy. You're pretty much in the start of the PDN tour, so if you want to give us an update on where you're at and what you're doing.
This is so the way the tour is set, we finally got it a little bit more organized than it has been. You know, I joke the tour actually started in 2008, but it took until like 2010 for it to actually a pretty linear or circular trip, as opposed to just zigzags all over the place and the idea of a tour. And then by 2012, when we linked up with PDN, it was pretty well set up, but over the last few years, it's just gotten so busy and cram-packed with new hosts, new classes, and do as much as we could. And when I sat down to look at what the tour was going to be this spring, last fall, in December, just decided, you know, it's got to be broken up a little bit. I need to be able to do some of the work, you know, to support things like the Avidity Arms project, things like the new collaboration with USCCA, obviously all the background work and the video work and the work that we do with all our other contributors for Personal Defense Network, to be some breaks built in. So it took us a couple years to get to the point where, okay, we were cycling locations and cycling venues. So some of them are going to be every other year. And we could have, you know, like 3 to 4 weeks on and then maybe 4 to 6 days off as a regular cycle during the tour. And then, of course, for me to have enough discipline and not say yes, but can we put another class in on this day or a couple classes here? And this is the first year that we tried it, and it's actually working out pretty well. So sort of had the Southeast as one leg, and then had a down week that I spent in a few days in Nashville, hanging out with my daughter and granddaughter and son-in-law there, and then went up to Bo, and then resumed this second leg of the tour, I don't know, about a week ago. So we did a class actually in Mount Vernon at Pioneer Shooting Center, and it's real close to Manhattan. So I got to spend a couple of days in the city. There was a big anti-terrorism conference going on at the same time. So I saw a lot of people I know there, got to hang out a little bit in town, had a couple of days change, and then we did a couple great classes there. And now I'm in Massachusetts at Cape Gunworks and in New Hampshire. So that's the New England kind of northeast leg of the tour. I'll head down to Pennsylvania. I'll be with Clint Macro at Trigger Pressers Union doing an extreme course. I don't do those as much as I used to have 15 years ago. You know, that was kind of our bread and butter, integrated grappling and shooting, contact shooting, extreme close quarters, weapon retention, all that stuff. And just kind of weaned back from that. Got really busy with the fundamental defensive shooting skills at IT 13. But we still get requests for that course a lot. So I'm doing one of those in Pennsylvania. And then there'll be a break for the NRA show. I'll be down at NRA annual meeting in Dallas. And then I'll start
Look like Rob may have frozen drop off. We'll wait a minute and see if he'll come back. So in the meantime, we're waiting for Rob. Like he said, he'll be at the NRA show in Dallas next week. And then when he comes back, we'll ask him more about the USCCA Expo that he just went to. I know he had a really big part in that. And then also too, if anyone hasn't linked in with Rob on social, you can find him online as well on Instagram, on Facebook and YouTube, and icetraining.us as well. So we're still waiting for Rob to come back on. It looks like he's back.
I'm back.
Awesome. Welcome back. Looks like he still might have a little bit of trouble with his connection.
We can just do like a read along.
You want to do a read along? We can do that. What do you have there?
The first book I've ever had that has like actual like pictures and stuff and like things and
All right. So tell us about the USCCA Expo that you just came back from.
It was great. We had a really good time there. It was funny. I don't know how many vendors there were, a few hundred vendors. I think there were over 5,000 people. They grew a lot since last year, and just a great, it's obviously really education oriented. UTM was there. Tony Labrea was there with UTM with a scenario training area. There was a live fire range, a trailer actually in the expo center, which was cool. People got to go in there and test out some guns, do that kind of thing. I think they had three. I spoke Friday in a big lecture hall. There was a demo stage. I spoke on Saturday. Concealed Carry was there. ConcealedCarry.com was there doing live broadcasts throughout the entire 3 days of the event. We had there was a women's concealed carry area that also had a little stage with some presentations and some Q&A that was going on. And out in the main lecture halls where I was Friday, they were cycling through a lot of different things as well. So obviously USCCA is so focused on education. They always have been. They're not really a political oriented organization. They kind of dabble in that. I think Tim did a great job on 60 Minutes a month or so ago. For anybody who saw him there, we really did a good job. But really, they're about education. They're about providing services to concealed carry, responsibly armed, concealed carriers around the U.S. And that was the theme of the show. The expo this year was responsibly armed, and it's obviously a big part of what we do at IC Training Company and PDN. So really proud for all the associations. Of course, that's the new book. Find it in the store at USCCA. It's level 1. We got the level 2 book is going to be in print in June. And of course, the programs, we've been running the classes that go along with it. So we're going to start certifying instructors from the USCCA cadre there as well. And just a lot of good things going on. I mean, so many of the vendors are people that are involved with Personal Defense Network or companies I've worked with. Crossbreed Holsters was there. Of course, Springfield was there. Tonight's event's brought to you by Springfield, and they've got that Gear Up special going on. If you buy any of their subcompact carry guns, you get 3 free magazines, which is a great deal. I actually had a student show up today with a gun from another brand, but he showed up with not enough magazines, and it cost him $100 to go buy a couple more magazines at the range so he could get through the class without having to, kind of be held back by his lack of training magazines. If you're going to take training practice seriously, you're going to want a bunch of magazines, and Springfield's hooking everybody up with that special through June 1st, I think.
That's what it looks like. Looks like it's running April through June. All right, so let's jump in. We've actually got a couple of live questions already in already, so we will just get right to it. All right. Do you want to talk about knives first, or do you want to talk about, not knives, I'm sorry, lasers or accuracy?
Where did the knives come from?
I don't know. If anyone has a knife question. Oh, what do you have there?
Well, no, this was like a gift knife. Like, someone asked about a knife, so I'm going to have my 221B tactical. This thing's like it's like a beast. It's got like a little seatbelt cutter and a glass breaker thing, and it's just kind of cool deal. 221B Tactical does a bunch of cool stuff. There were some of the people I got to hang out with in in New York. I have to go by their shop, their world headquarters, just right around Times Square, and they do a lot of cool base layers and gloves and stuff to keep the operators cool under their body armor and stuff.
Nice. Actually, that was a question that came through in another Ask Rob that we didn't get to. What is the ideal clothing for going to one of your classes? Like, what should people wear?
It's kind of cliche, but I mean, comfortable clothing that you can move around in and be athletic in, appropriate to the weather. Wear layers, that kind of stuff is all. But that's really what it is. It's if I've often said, people ask me on handle that level of personal responsibility for the range and dress. That seems like a little cavalier, but the reality is people overthink it, right? And the people that they have to go out and buy special clothes to come to the range are probably the ones who are going to screw it up, right? Because you don't have to go buy special clothes to go to the range. Like, just wear, serviceable footwear and comfortable socks and clothes that you can be athletic in. Fighting is an athletic endeavor, so we're going to be training that. Now, at a higher level, a higher kind of intellectually conceptual level, you should train and practice, especially practice in clothing that fits what you're actually going to be wearing in real life if you have to defend yourself. But you can go too far with that, right? If a woman's a real estate agent, she dresses up in a skirt, business kind of top jacket in high heels, no, it would be dumb to come out to the range dressed like that and learn the stuff that we teach in any of these classes. Come out and learn in jeans or yoga pants and sneakers and a t-shirt and a sweatshirt, whatever. And then later, should you practice, like especially presentation from the holster in the clothing that you wear and however you wear it? Absolutely. But that's much more about practice than it is about the training environment out on the range. So, every once in a while I have someone ask about, like, should I wear a suit? I wear a suit every day and it's an advanced pistol handling class. Go to Goodwill and buy a suit for, $50 with some, giant lapels, and like, let's get some photo ops out of this, right? Like, just don't bring a $1,500 suit out to the range. Go, bring a $50 suit or $100 suit out the range, or just a 20 in a for all. Am I dead again?
No, you're back. All right, we got you. All right, let's talk about lasers. So, Stone asks, how do you feel about using a laser when dry firing to train your body for better unsighted fire alignment? Not meant to take away from live fire, but something that can be done at home between range sessions.
So here's the problem. I just happen to have a laser trainer right here. So I'm not sure if the question is about a laser trainer or a laser aiming device on a carry gun trying to use it during your dry fire. So I don't recommend that, because those are activated different, right? They're activated by grip, or if you're using a Viridian, it's instant on when it comes out of the holster. They're trying to use those as training tools isn't probably where you want to go. But if you get the SIRT pistol, this is the little one. I think the little one is one of the kind of coolest things. If you're into, dry fire and laser aided training and you carry it on, until this came out, option. So here's a SIRT pistol. This is the laser. So it's got on when you start it, and then the green light actually break the shot. So using something like this, let's say what I was really interested in is practicing presentation from the holster while seated. So presentation from the holster while seated to the right, see a threat, I reach down, push back, I'm going to come across my body parallel with my thigh, so I'm not covering my thigh. And as I orient and then drive out and extend, at some point, I'm going to take the shot. Now, this is really the important part, right? Getting the gun out, getting the concealment garment out of the way, getting the gun up, clearing your body, and then orienting towards the threat. I'm not going to learn how to shoot with this, right? This can help me maintain my skills. This can help me practice things like presentation from the holster inside my car while I'm sitting in my garage. I don't need to drive my car out on the range to do that live fire. But what can we do with this when it actually comes time to shoot? So let me see what I got here. If we take give you like a wall over there. When I drive this gun out and I fire that shot, the problem is those shots that you're seeing on the wall there, I can't see them really well behind the gun. So unlike a bullet hole that shows up in the target, and then I pull my gun down, I can see where the shot went. When I fire those laser shots, right, I don't really see them necessarily all that well while I'm shooting, especially if I am practicing my sighted fire. So I know the question was specifically about unsighted fire. So here's the concern. If you can see my eye line, when I'm here shooting in this position, those lasers are behind the gun, right? If I lower the gun, now I can look over the gun and I can see the laser shots. Well, the problem is this is the training scar. Is if I'm looking at the target but I'm hitting it, I'm here or my so I might really want what would be my your present actually shoot with sight, right? Now I come back, put my gun away, pick up the camera, look at the video, and the video will tell me where those shots went. So, you know, obviously you can get targets from laser light. Next level training cert are tied up with some different companies that allow you to use computer read where you're trying. Of course, the eye marksman makes a lot of different cool things. Really cool. They've been with us on the tour before. Laser ammo, we've had their targets featured on PDN. So there's a lot of different laser targets. I think we've got eye marksman, laser ammo, and laser light all featured in different times and different videos on PDN. So take a look at the targets that were recorded shots. Take a look at thinking about using video or working with a training partner, but be really careful about ending up here with the gun under your eyes while you're shooting so you can see the laser. You want to be here, and if you're here, you may or may not actually see those laser impacts.
So let's talk about lasers that are actually mounted to carry guns. Where should a laser fall in relation to their sights? This has been asked by James, and then there's a follow-up question too, asking where should my laser fall in relation to my sights?
So the trick is that I'm assuming we're talking about pistols.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about pistols, the your AR where sit up really offset. So your sights will cover the trajectory of the pistol bullet over a relatively wide and all of the plausible distances you're going to shoot, right? All aiming, you know, you don't have to hold over anything crazy like that. The laser, however, is almost always going to be mounted somewhat significantly below the bore. So if I'm below the bore significantly, then I've got a steeper angle, right? So I've got like an angle coming up this way is only going to cross the path of the bullet at one point for practical purposes, right? So that laser beam, which is a straight line, the bullet path, which drops off as you get further away from the bullet, it's like a kind of an arc or more of a curve downward. You've got one point of aim for where that laser is going to be exactly just right. Now, left and right wise, you can zero it all the way across. So with our sights, we don't have to worry too much about whether we're zeroed at 20 feet or 15 feet or 40 feet. If you're worried about that, you're doing something other than defensive shooting. So the sights will work across all those ranges. Your laser may only be spot on at one distance. Obviously, the distance in which your environment dictates being the most like data set that we use, you know, PDN and my programs, we use Tom Gibbons data set is the best personal defense data set, and that suggests overwhelmingly 90% of shootings occur between 9 feet. Add in another of them happen between 9 and 21 feet. So if you were to zero your laser at 20 feet, you would be able to cover there, you know, maybe two difference at the most at the front end of that 10 feet distance beyond 2 arms out to 8 feet. You're covering the vast majority of where you would actually be using a laser in the situations you'd be using laser. Keep in mind, however, that the laser, if you're using it as a tertiary aiming method, right? Primary is kinesthetic alignment, secondary is using your sights. The third option is using a laser. One of the main areas a laser gives you an advantage is when I can't extend the gun because someone's charging in at me, or I'm cramped up. Somebody opens up a closet. I'm hiding in there. I don't know why I'm hiding in the closet, but anyway, if they come at the gun, I decide to pull the gun back into a retention position, but I'm not in contact. In this retention position, obviously the guy's going to be within that 10-foot range. So just keep that in mind, that if you have a laser set up where the laser, for whatever reason, is really far below the bore on your pistol, zeroing it at 20 feet could mean that it's very low at 4 feet. Zeroing it at 4 feet could mean that it's very high at 20 feet. So you have to, you have to experiment with it a little bit. But I think if anybody were to pick a number and just say 15 feet for the way most of the lasers are, in mind, there are some brands of lasers that are closer to the bore, right? You've got some lasers are going to be mounted up on the grip, and you're going to be closer to the bore, but you're also going to be off left and right. And now you have to factor that in. I really don't like those types. I want it to at least be under the bore, so you're very close to the bore, and they'll have less offset as well. But the most common types of lasers now are going to be rail mounted, probably integrated with a light, and you do have to worry about that offset a little bit.
So you must have been reading James' mind, who asked the question, because his follow-up question is, what is efficient distance for zeroing your laser? So awesome. Two birds with one stone there. All right, next question comes from Bob. Bob asks, is it safe to dry fire? He hears it's okay. He hears you should never do it. And he also hears that it's okay sometimes.
I don't, by safe, I have to turn you over to the DVD that we did, and there's some video clips you can find if you search dry fire at personalnetwork.com. A decade ago with Claude Werner. Claude has probably thought more about dry fire practice than anybody else I know in a constructive and valuable way. And one of the things that he stresses is the not much as fire a lot how you are dry firing. I told the story before. It happened to me back in the 90s, thinking a gun was dry in a controlled environment, and it wasn't. So it happens to a lot of people. The way that you go about separating your dry fire training from your live fire training, separating your laser training from live fire training, keeping your, I know people who've made that mistake where they've integrated their cert pistol with live fire, and they've gone for one more rep and forgot which gun they had in their hand in the house and ripped around through some walls. So I know that these mistakes happen. So you have to have a way of doing it safely, which really means controlling all the ammo, checking the gun itself, being in a sequestered environment away from any ammo, always pointing the gun in what should be a generally safe direction anyway, the basement wall, reinforced wall, bookshelf area when you're putting your targets up, something like that. So if that's what he means, we have a whole bunch of great advice in addition to just kind of the 100,000-foot view I just put out through Claude at PDN. If what he means is safely in terms of training scars and muscle memory kind of things, that's a little bit more complicated. And that is, I alluded to it a little bit earlier, you can't learn how to shoot with dry fire. You've got to manage recoil, and you can't talk about reloading. Reloading is probably a good example. Sometimes I'll see people online, like with the original cert pistols that have the drop-free magazines, but the slides don't move, where they'll like draw their gun, fire a laser shot, and immediately start a reload, and drop the magazine out, stick a new magazine in, take another laser shot, drop a magazine out, stick another magazine in, drop a magazine out. There's no recoil. There's nothing but choreography of just rote movement. And it's movement you would never want to emulate. Like, when would you ever want to fire a shot, reload, fire a shot, reload, fire a shot, reload? It's not a thing that we ever need to do. But for a while, it became cool to show, how many reloads you could do in a second or whatever on YouTube. The problem is that training the aspects of hitting the magazine release and finding a fresh magazine and sticking a magazine in, and maybe, I guess, pretending to rack the slide are all great. And those are important pieces of the puzzle. I have seen, like, literally countless really good shooters and really good demonstrators fail to employ their response to slide lock or to a click, you know, the failure to fire, even though they're great at demonstrating it and they've practiced it a lot, they practiced it in isolation from the stimulus. You're not fixing the biggest problem cognitively processing, and you certainly aren't choreographing and planning for reset, or sorry, for a reload. You're just shooting, and if you don't feel, if your body doesn't recognize that slide lock, and then immediately, non-cognitively, without an analytical decision, start the reload, you've got a problem. You see a lot of guys now with rifles. You'll see these demos. I saw one the other day. Someone was talking about sling versus no sling, and on a transition to a pistol. But he was shooting, and he'd look at his rifle, and then he'd put the rifle down and shoot the pistol. And I'm like, what are you on earth are you seeing? If you're in a bedroom, if you're like a SWAT guy or military guy doing CQB, or you're in your room with a rifle and a pistol barricaded, what are you ever going to see when you look at your rifle that's going to cause you not to transition to your pistol to shoot the bad guy that's 15 feet away? Like, there's nothing you're going to see here. And just taking the time to look, like, at the level where they need to be worried about sling, no sling, or even transitions from rifle to pistol, at 15 feet across the bedroom, you could already have had that pistol out and shot the guy in the time it takes you to cognitively analyze whatever it is you're looking for. So this whole thing of are we tying our responses to the stimulus so that they can be executed seamlessly without an analytical process that on the range costs you basically nothing, but in a fight may not even be available to you because of lighting issues and focus on the bad guy and all that stuff. So I'd be really careful with that kind of dry fire. Be careful that you think you're learning how to shoot. Be careful that you think you're practicing your reloads. You may be practicing pieces of it. So what is good? And again, I would encourage people, like, Google this or go look at PDN, appropriate live fire, or the best the dry fire practices, in my opinion, are things like, you know, learning to keep the gun in the high compressed ready while you're moving around, while you're getting up and down, while you're moving through your house. You're not swinging the gun and banging into things. Assessing the environment with the gun in the high compressed ready, making that 911 call with the gun in the ready position. Practicing all of your presentations dry is great, right? Like, so I can get into virtually any position and practice getting the gun from the holster without covering my body, and then getting it to a shooting position, right? If I needed to shoot over here, and get the gun out of the holster, drive out over here, and get into some kind of a shooting position. I can do it in my car. I can do it in a suit. I can do it in a tux. I can do it in, you know, sweatpants and a t-shirt. Get a new holster. I want to go practice dry the presentations. I may not even need to go to the extended shooting position because, again, I'm not learning to shoot. I'm learning to present from under concealment. Gloves, strip your gloves off and learn to draw the gun from under a coat when it starts getting cold out. And when it comes to the SIRT pistol, there is one really cool thing. I'll go back to where we're looking at the wall here. Here's a kind of a cool exercise that I use for a lot of people. A lot of people, I'll pretend I'm left-handed for a second. A lot of people stage their trigger. They get to right about here, and then they try to break the shot, and it screws them up. It's you know, the Glock makes a loud clicky noise on reset, and that, you know, there's a whole generation of people who are heavily influenced by that loud clicky noise to think that there's, you know, they're supposed to turn the Glock into a 2-stage trigger or something. The SIRTs can be set up with really heavy wall right there, and it's great for people breaking the habit of staging the trigger and then trying to snap the shot. The gun to be perfectly still. We need the gun to be aligned with our line of sight over our target throughout the trigger press, right? So throughout that smooth trigger press. And what you can see there on the camera, and I'm obviously not, you know, horrible example of me looking back here. Look, trick shooting. I'm Jerry Mitchell. So the idea is I'm here, and what I want is for those lasers to come on basically at the same time. If you have a SIRT pistol and you do this, and you get the red laser, it sits there for a second, and you're trying to make everything perfect, and break the shot. Well, a lot of times that's what I see on the range, is people think everything's gonna be perfect. Then you see that, you know, you see this, then you see that off to the side. So they're trying to break that shot, and in breaking that shot, they're getting a sympathetic compression of the fingers. They're doing all kinds of stuff. Everybody knows you can break those habits, and you can learn to stage the trigger and break the shot really well. But why? Right? When we shoot quickly, we're just pushing right through that break. So when we're shooting slowly, why not push through that brake also, right? If I have a very high level of precision, I just press slower, but I'm not stopping at the wall. So what ends up happening is a huge difference between this and then braking, this and then braking, and this. That's a smooth trigger press, right? So that's what I'm looking for, is that smooth trigger press versus this and then that, this and then that. And that's left-handed. So that's probably more left-handed trigger press practice than I've done in a decade. But so
look at you trick shooting.
Yeah, there are lots of things that you can do with these dry environments, dry training pistols, the laser simulators, but be careful what you're doing. Be careful that you're building a false confidence about the application of skills which have the stimuli that should elicit the response embedded in recoil management or in slide lock or in actually getting a failure to fire. Because every time you pull the trigger and you don't tap in and you get a click and you don't tap and rack, you're undoing what you've done to condition yourself that click means tap, rack, and figure out what you can do next. Every dry fire rep undoes some of that. And people don't like to admit that, but that's how the brain and body work.
So we're halfway through the show. This is PDN Live, Ask Rob Anything, and thank you to Springfield Armory for sponsoring this. You can interact with us online. We've got an awesome newsletter. It's free. You should totally sign up for it and get all this content delivered to your inbox. You can find us online on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. For those of you that are listening live, keep asking questions. There are great questions coming in. First half of the show, we covered dry fire and non-live fire. So Rob, let's move into live fire questions. Let's see here. Jake asks, tips for improving my pistol accuracy beyond 10 yards.
Yeah. So how much time, how likely is it we're going to need to defend yourself? It's very, very, very low percentage chance. And then that drives how much time, effort, and energy you put into it. And most importantly, it really drives the prioritization. So if you're like on fire from 9 to 21 feet, and especially 9 to 15, and you're super good at responding to slide lock, you practice your non-diagnostic linear malfunction drills, you're really good at getting your gun out of your holster after integrating a startle reaction to give you a realistic starting point. You're good in 360 degrees at that. I can simulate getting startled off to the left, reach for the gun, orient towards the target, move laterally, up and down. Like you're good at seated shooting and presentation from the holster while seated, about covering yourself efficiently. Maybe knock down on your ground, lying on your back, maybe lying on your stomach, lying on your side. If you've done all that, you've done all that work. And if you stage a rifle at home, you've done a lot of that work with your rifle also, because you've got a rifle staged in your bedroom. And unless your bedroom's 10 yards, we're not worried about the 10-yard shot there either. So there's just so much work to be done that the average person, the average PDN member hasn't done. The average person that comes to my classes and spends 2 or 3 days with us, so much work that hasn't been done before they should be worried about getting better at pistol shooting beyond 10 yards. That I have to preface anything I'm going to say there with that. Like, let's make sure that we're really prioritizing and getting good at those other things first before we go out and worry about the other thing. If you freeze up, you could end up beyond. I need. Yeah, right. Because if you want to shoot, groups, I was shooting an earlier tonight, and nailing one hole to all the shots touching at 21 feet. Again, still keeping all the shots. Then we were all kind of testing today inside of our circles. The problem is the time, effort, energy, money doesn't help you at 9 to 15 feet. And there's so many more important things to worry about at 9 to 15 feet. Bring your gun to shoot better beyond 7, 8. So be careful about the gear chase. Be careful about your technique chasing that distance. And then break. Press the trigger smooth. And if you have a kind of a stock fire that has a pretty heavy wall, that's going to be the the first thing to get good at. The second thing to understand is that when you're practicing at the range, you don't have the heavy breathing. It's very easy to control your body, and it's very hard to. Again, when we start shooting at extreme distances, steel, so it's hard to control that target and make it move and kind of flow more realistically. You know, helium balloons in the wind on a normal day where the balloon thing comes to my mind for how you're going to get a little bit of human movement, like the chest or a head moving at 10, 15, 20 yards. Not, you know, full isometric tension, get the gun perfectly still, like relative to the core of the earth so you can hit the bullseye target. You're going to be still in a dynamic, fully extended mode, athletically engaged with your head forward, and you've got to be able to maintain that smooth trigger press and your sight alignment, sight picture while the target is dancing around, while the head is moving, right? Or while that guy's body at 30 or 40 or 50 yards is moving. And so we try to simulate that and do that as much as we can in our advanced pistoling class. We spend, I don't know, about half an hour on shooting at what we call unreasonable distances beyond 50 yards. A lot of it comes down to trigger press. A lot of it comes down to understanding the targets we're training on aren't emulating human movement. But if you do end up in a situation where, you know, a guy's, you know, behind cover, you got a guy with a rifle, you know, in a tree or on the edge of a building or coming out of a hotel window or something, and you're going to try to shoot at what is a generally static target, the position that I recommend that people go, you know, from their normal intuitive fully what we're going to do is straighten up and put our weight much more of an isosceles position. So you're putting more of your weight on your skeleton. It takes out some of the variables from heavy breathing. And then the next thing to do would be to think about dropping that elbow down and pulling this arm back. You're not pushing and pulling. You're locking this arm, dropping the elbow down and pulling back against your body. It's more of like a chat shooting position than a weaver, where your arm bar pulling back against the body. And that's a great way, remembering to loosen the fingertips a little bit to really isolate the gun from any except the minimal amount of movement issues and your trigger press for completely ridiculous shooting or something like that. So come to advanced title of it, but it was one of our videos we did in 2010. And he shots. I remember we were shooting it, you know, at chest size. And that.
Looks like oh, he's back.
I'm back.
Awesome. All right. So let's pick up where we left off. Question again, more live firing or live firing drills. This one is more on the AR side. So what is the best way of addressing a right-handed standard AR owner that is left eye dominant? Should they use a red dot, both eyes open, train and adjust to shooting right-handed, buy a left-hand upper? What would you suggest for someone who's left eye dominant using a right-hand AR?
Okay, but there's a missing piece there that I'm not sure. Is the assumption they've already started shooting left-handed and they're using a right-handed AR?
Yes, let's assume that. Yeah.
All right. Well, you're kind of like you've crossed a bridge now. Let's go from blank slate. If you're just getting started and you are left eye dominant, but you're a right-handed human being and you do most of your things with your right hand, you should not be switching hands for defensive, combative type shooting, especially any kind of a defensive pistol shooting. There's no reason to switch. It's silly, right? I can hold the gun in front of my right eye. I can hold the gun in front of my left eye. It doesn't matter. My head can turn a little bit. The idea that we're going to switch hands for pistol shooting is ridiculous and antiquated. For a rifle, in traditional marksmanship pursuits and even in clay target shooting also, so on the kind of fast side, following the bird and breaking the shot, and in extreme marksmanship issues, there are a lot of compelling reasons for switching to the other side of the body. So going from your normal strong coordinated side to your weak side, because you have 4 points of contact on a long gun and the trigger is all you really need to worry about. Here you aren't doing whole hand manipulations to control the entire gun. You have 4 points of contact, and all we're trying to develop is good trigger press. So it's less horrifying to switch to left-handedness for your left eye dominance in some competition shooting endeavors. For defensive shooting, though, it shouldn't be necessary. When people talk about eye dominance, we're talking about like small differences for most human beings. And in fact, we're talking about differences that under certain lighting conditions can switch. We're talking about different distance issues. Some people see better close with one eye, and then if the target is 15 yards away, or what they're looking at is 15 yards away, they actually see better with the other eye. So the fact that eye dominance changes over age, over time, eye dominance can change. So there's a lot of variables. If people get LASIK surgery, it changes things. Their contacts on, contacts off, glasses on, glasses off. So chasing what the little test tells you and changing something radical over a tiny difference doesn't make a lot of sense. So I would highly encourage you to shoot right-handed if you're a right-handed person, unless your vision is so distorted in the right side that you just can't get clear sight focus. You can't make out the red dot. When it comes to mounting the red dot, remember that the closer the red dot is to the eye that's in front of the cheek weld, the less likely you are to get like confused or even try to look at that red dot with your other eye. So if your other eye is dominant, mounting and you mount that red dot way out in front of you, like a scout scope kind of mount, things get confusing. You pull it back, well, then this is the only eye that can see through it. And this eye is just going to focus on the target, do whatever. You can have both eyes open, superimpose the dot, or you close the eye and just focus on the dot if you need to. Also keep in mind that for casual clay shooters, the solution has always been to just like literally just kind of put a piece of scotch tape or just in any other way sort of occlude the shooting lens or the safety glass, the lens on the dominant eye side, so that this eye was going to pick up the clay and the shotgun would come up in front of that eye because this eye was occluded a little bit. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to make your vision worse in a combative training environment when you're training for defensive shooting. Don't go down that route. But an important lesson from that is if that red dot or the sights aren't in front of the dominant eye, most people can do just fine with the other eye that's not quite as good under those circumstances, but definitely good enough. Think about some of the vision problems people have that really have legitimate vision challenges, and they still muddle through defensive shooting situations. If you have normally healthy eyes and one eye is like 5% better, well, guess what? Your other eye is still probably way better than some of the people standing on the range with you, and they're still getting it done. So the non-dominant thing may be just fine.
So you don't suggest being a pirate and covering one eye?
No, but nope.
All right, we've got a question from Adam. He says, "Hey Rob, I really enjoy your training tips and videos. Too bad one's not able to actually perform these skills at any range in South Louisiana. So what do we do? I'm up to my elbows in videos and articles, but if I can't actually do the training skill, what's the point? Help."
What's Brandon LaBeouf doing? What was Brandon listening to this? He's always has a range in Louisiana, and if he's not letting you practice realistically, you tell him to knock it off. Don't remember the name of the ring, but there are certainly a lot of ranges where you can't do a whole bunch of the stuff that you see us doing on the PDN tour and you see the videos posted. I get that. There are a lot of things you can do though. Some of the things that you can do, for example, lateral movement. If you're like, oh, I can't move on the range, I can't move and shoot, or go watch the video again, because lateral movement is not moving and shooting. Lateral movement is moving as you get into your position to shoot, and you're planted while you're shooting specifically, because we can manage recoil better, we can align our target better, it's all better, right? We're more effective shooters when we're planted. Presentation from the holster. Well, I can't do presentation from the holster. a lot of ranges, like the range I'm at here, Cape Gunworks, they don't let the average person walk in off the street and go from the holster, but they offer a few different paths to being able to train from the holster in their stalls in their indoor range. One is to go through a class like the one that I'm teaching this week, or the staff members who are certified by my company. You go in classes, you're allowed to, you're checked off in your member profile. You got to get a gold sticker on your card or whatever, but you're allowed to go from the holster. Or they every once in a while will run a class, and they'll say, okay, everybody who comes to this Tuesday night event is going to be holster qualified specifically to the range, and they get people set up that way. That way, if somebody isn't into defensive shooting, they're into competition shooting, but they want to go through that class, they have that way. The third thing they do is just a private lesson. I don't know that they do it here, other than specifically like hiring an instructor privately. But one of the ranges I was on last week, they will just with you Pioneer Shooting Center. They said, they'll just take somebody and they'll check them out. They'll make sure that their technique is good and if they look like they know what they're doing. And then if they're not good enough, they will then say, okay, well, if you in a half hour private lesson or come to a class, we'll get you squared away. Most ranges have a mechanism for that. I had a student in class today. He said he can do any of the stuff that we talked about, but because of noise concerns, they are not allowed to do rapid fire. So they're not allowed to do bursts of fire because the neighbors complain or whatever. So his whole thing was, I can do all of this, but I can't fire a multiple round string of fire and sort of randomly get slide lock to practice the stimulus for the reloads. So he's got to do that under different circumstances. We talked about that stimulus response pattern thing. So it's tough. Andy, a great series of video tips. I think there's an article at PDN, and once again, there is a DVD that is realistic training at a traditional range, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about traditional ranges that don't allow holster work, don't allow movement, don't allow rapid fire, any of that kind of stuff. You got to remember, there were still 10 or 11 states, including Texas, that you could not get a concealed carry permit. There was zero opportunity in a big chunk, a double-digit number of states in the early 90s. And now every state has concealed carry. Most of the states have shall issue concealed carry. And there's I think there's like 30 million plus people now that are eligible to carry because of permits or because they live in one of the 12 or 13 constitutional carry states that we have, where you don't even need a permit. You own a gun, you can legally carry it. So ranges are having to adjust. The industry had to adjust. The law enforcement training had to adjust to the fact that there's a ton more people out there now legally carrying guns and looking for opportunities to train and practice than there were, even 20 years ago. Forget about a generation ago. So most of the ranges and most of the range operation policies that were established in America were established during a time when there wasn't much concealed carry going on. It just wasn't. 50 years ago, there was not a lot of concealed carry. There was almost no concealed carry training until the late 70s, organized, and a lot of that just went off into competition land. So it's really been something new. It's the last couple of decades that we've really seen this, and a lot of ranges just need to be reminded that, hey, it's time to evolve. And maybe the ranges talked about it. I'm doing some work with the National Shooting Sports Foundation to help ranges understand how training interacts with the rest of their business components. And one of those big things is having training at a range, like Cape Gunworks here, like Bristlecone, like Reno Guns and Range out there in Nevada. Having a good, vibrant training program means you're going to accommodate people like yourself better, and you're going to earn those customers. And rangers are figuring that out.
So if someone wants to bring these resources to their range to suggest, to say it's just an old school range where there's not training, how can they go about, what's a tactful way of going about getting your range on board with that?
This article series and some of the videos we're going to put out with National Shooting Sports Foundation. So the first article published about a month ago, that article is going to now spin off. It's kind of an overview article. Here's all the ways that training interacts and should interact with the rest of your range and retail business. And now we're going to go into each one of those different ways in more detail. And then we're going to do a video cast session, kind of like this PDN Live, through NSSF for range managers and range owners to get involved. Obviously, there have to be NSSF member ranges, but that's probably the big picture kind of resource, the way I'm trying to change that situation for a lot of people. Individually, I would take your laptop, take your smartphone and show them some of the videos with Andy talking about how to train realistically at a traditional range. One of the things that he talks about in his series of videos through PDN is how to convince the range that it should be okay for you to do certain things. You know, they'll look at lateral movement the way you see us demonstrating in the videos, and oh, you can't do that. That looks, you're moving too fast. It's too tactical. You're too crazy. Whatever it is. But you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? Like, where in the rule book does it say? It says you can't move and shoot. Okay, I'm not moving and shooting. Well, you're moving the gun around. Okay, but look at that guy. Like they look at that. And I'm saying I'd be argumentative, but I mean, look at the other guy into a shooting in his hand, and then he's shooting. Maybe when he's extended, he's moving his feet to settle his position, and then he's shooting. So that's all you're doing with lateral movement. You've got a gun in your hand, and as you're getting it in your shooting position, you're shifting left or right. When the gun goes to slide lock and you're obviously not shooting, you're pulling the gun in and you're moving as if you were going to be moving to cover during your reload. So if you explain it to them kind of properly, even though it might look different to a lot of these old range officer guys, technically there's no rule that says you can't move your feet while you have a gun in your hand. And that's all you're doing. You're moving your feet while you have your gun in your hand. You just have to maybe point that out to them.
All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour, so thank you everybody for joining. Thank you Springfield Armory for sponsoring tonight's PDN Live. And Rob, if people are going to be in Dallas next week for NRA, where will they be able to find you? Are you going to be wandering around, or will you be at a booth?
I will actually be at the Springfield Armory booth on the first day that the exhibits are open. Friday, I'll be there at 10 a.m. I think they'll have a little sign there. They'll be advertising. I'm assuming the setup is kind of similar to what we did at SHOT Show. Where we had this big screen and a little stage, and Rob Latham and I were on the little stage, but projected onto the big screen at the Springfield Armory booth. It's always a really big, huge booth. It's going to be easy to find at NRA annual meeting. I'll be kind of touring around. I mean, I'll be at Crossbreed for a little while. I'll be with Viridian. I'll be with a lot of the tour sponsors that'll be there. So I'll be hanging out with them. Yeah, it's just generally it's going to be a good time. One of the nice things about the NRA annual meeting, of course, is that it's a family event. It's a consumer show, so lots of families come in. USCCA Expo was the same way last week. You know, there were families, there were kids there. I got to meet a bunch of kids that signed some books and took some pictures with them. NRA annual meeting is like that, and my wife and the baby Pincus will be there. Last year, my daughter and granddaughter were there at NRA, so it's kind of it's a more casual show. It's an end user show. It's not a big, formal trade event like SHOT Show or NESGW or any of those. And I'm not going to be speaking at Springfield and kind of hopping around all of our tour sponsors' booths, having a good time, enjoying it like so many other tens of thousands of people will be.
Well, I think they're predicting 100,000 this year, so it'll be a lot of people there. So we'll see you next week, and thank you for those joining us tonight. And those that will not see Rob next week at NRAAM, we will see you next month on another PDN Live. So thank you, and have a good night.
PDN